I think one of the biggest travesties that we have is that nobody teaches money. You almost can't even find it in a college, a higher level of education. You can't even find it. And so, therefore, yes, it does become a happenstance lifestyle. It's not with intention, at least on the financial side. I think a lot of things are like that, though. Like, why am I put on this earth? What's my job to do here? What impact should I have on others?
As you mentioned, it's a lot of things. It's not just financial, it's health. If we've not been taught how to protect our health, then everybody eats McDonald's 4 nights a week. So why wouldn't I do that too? It becomes this
Welcome, entrepreneurs, to Pay or Quit.
where we reveal the gritty truth behind business success.
People see the glory, but not the struggle it takes to get there.
We're here to share the real stories of entrepreneurs navigating the tough intersection of business and relationships. I'm Tony Klein.
And I'm Shawn Johnson, and together we'll guide you through the real challenges faced as serial entrepreneurs.
Join us for the untold stories behind the scenes.
Buckle in, it might get messy.
I think we've both broke free from that going to work 9 to 5, punching the clock. We've broke through that separately in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I've figured out how to live a lifestyle that will allow me to live semi-retired now. And unfortunately, just with some decisions I made in the past, I didn't focus on the financial aspect of living a good quality life as much as I focused on how to break free from that 9 to 5. So I've figured out how to do that, be able to train 2-3 hours a day, do my running, do whatever I want. And then you've figured out how to do that same thing by focusing on the financial aspect first. And now you're in a position where you can now do that same thing. But I think most people have not actually gone through that exercise and figured out how to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't know, why the epiphanies happen or whatever. Obviously, like our outward influences help shape our thought processes, if you will, like who you listen to and what you read and those types of things. But it seems like I had some major paradigm shifts pretty early on. And it was like, what's the purpose of money? And time is not money. You always hear that saying, like, time is money. Time's not freaking money. I could prove that. Tony, I'll write you a check for $1 million right now. But in order to get the check, you have to die at midnight. Would you take it? No, of course you wouldn't take that. That just proves
Yeah.
that time's not money because time is infinitely better than money.
Yeah.
So, those are like I don't know, the bigger paradigm shifts, if you will. There's just two, there's a bunch more, but anyhow, I'm rambling.
Well, so on these sales calls, you mentioned that people don't have definitive financial goals.
Yes, I would say that in order to live a life by design, if you don't live a life by design, you will live a life by default. That is where they have chosen.
I wonder if there's something else to that. I wonder if there's a way to dig a little bit deeper, because in my coaching, I am always telling people to create a default position, leave nothing to chance, leave nothing to have somebody else control. So if we're going to an owner and we're asking them, or a client, and we're asking them to make a decision, I'm not waiting until they make that decision. I'm giving them the option to give me input. But if I don't hear back within 48 hours, I have a default position, an action that I'm already going to take. So I think there's something, it's not that we're living life by default, but we haven't even established what our default should be. And so
Yeah.
we're just living life by happenstance.
Yeah. And I would say that how would I define default or even happenstance would be all of the things that took that all the inputs, whether it's internal or external, that has gone into our lives from baby to childhood to, high school to going to college or not going to college and, relationships and all those things. have really shaped who we are today, and quote unquote shaped the default of who we are, shaped the happenstance of who we are. And I think, one of the biggest travesties that we have is that nobody teaches money in almost any realm. You almost can't even find it in a college, a higher level of education. You can't even find it. And it's ridiculous. And so therefore, yes, it does become a happenstance lifestyle. It's not with intention. At least on the financial side, I think a lot of things are like that though. Like what's the why am I put on this earth? What's my job to do here? What impact should I have on others? Nobody thinks about
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's a lot of things. It's not just financial, it's health. If we've not been
it. Yeah.
taught how to protect our health, then everybody eats McDonald's 4 nights a week, so why wouldn't I do that too?
Right.
It becomes this, we fall into the circumstances that we're in, and I think one of the ways you break out of that, I remember having a conversation with I must have been like 18 years old. I was having a conversation with my mom, and I was saying something. I don't remember the exact details, but I was talking about control. And I mentioned how I'm really uncomfortable when I'm not in control of a situation.
Mhm.
And that conversation led into another conversation or another topic, which was I want to own the outcome on everything. I want everything to be my responsibility. Because if it's not my responsibility or if it's not my fault, if I'm not in control, then I have no power to change it. So that's when people have the victim mentality, that I'm a victim of my circumstances, then that means I don't have the power to change it. If it wasn't my fault, if I didn't make mistakes or make decisions or take actions that created the situation, then I can't take actions to recreate the situation with a better outcome. And I feel like a lot of society, in a lot of our aspects of our lives, we fall into that victim mentality where we're placing blame on somebody else. And when it's their fault, if they have the power, then they have the control, which means I don't have the control to change it or to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the antithesis of that? What's the opposite? Somebody that, even though they don't have the control, doesn't blame others for it?
I I try to look into the situation of I always have some level of control, and I have to focus on controlling the things that I can control. And to lead it back to a couple of coaching conversations I've had recently where we're talking about KPIs, if we're tracking something in a KPI or a key performance indicator, but I don't have the ability to influence or affect the performance, then I shouldn't be held responsible for that. That's a stat. That's an OKR. If I want to reduce our outstanding balance, our accounts payable, or whatever, that's a stat that I'm tracking, but I need to turn those stats into something actionable, some step I can take. And even if there's only a very minute thing that I can do, there's still something I can do to
Mhm.
take action. So I don't know if there is an opposite of somebody that doesn't have control but doesn't place blame, because in my mind there's always something that we have control over.
Yeah, and so I guess how you can mentally overcome that is that, whatever your level of control, because you always have some level of control, I agree with you, is that we should not point fingers. It should always be like, what could I have done different here, and not what you should have done different.
Absolutely. And I think that takes a level of maturity and self-awareness that is really difficult to accomplish. I mean,
Yeah.
I talk about being aware that I think there's always something that I can control, but it doesn't mean that I'm always able to follow through with that. So I have the awareness, but sometimes I don't have the ability to think about that in advance. Sometimes it's I'm looking at the situation after the fact and say, okay, well, I'm
Mhm.
going to use that as a learning experience for next time. But I think it's a really easy concept to agree to and buy into. And then it takes a lifetime of practice to be able to execute properly.
Well, yeah, because the reality is people are people and they're unpredictable. We're all unpredictable. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and then we have this inherent want for something to work out.
Hmm.
We're just super optimistic about, like, yeah, it'll work out. It's fine. You know, it's not a big deal. You know, instead of just
Yeah.
taking charge, maybe. I don't know what that might be, but yeah, it's interesting.
So I want to talk about something else that we brought up earlier before we hit record, and that was um, talking a little bit about product market fit.
Okay,
And
yeah.
we don't need to get into the conversation we were having earlier about competitive analysis and competitors and being concerned about what our competitors are doing. But I think when we're trying to define, as an entrepreneur, when we're trying to define our place in the market, there are many ways to go about figuring out what I'm going to bring to market. And you and I have both, even recently, done some things where we brought some things to market that failed because, again, going back to the conversation we just had, we didn't control the things we could have controlled
Mhm.
ahead of time. And and so I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation around how do you determine your product market fit or where you fit in the marketplace, and how to go about making sure that you have the best chance of success when you bring something to the market.
Man, it's a big question. I think it probably starts on the level of the only let's look at the basic level of what why business transacts. And it transacts because somebody has a problem and somebody else is willing to solve it. And that somebody that has a problem is willing to pay for that problem to be solved. That's the other part of the coin, I think. Now, how do we figure out if there's a product market fit to that? Well, first of all, you gotta know if somebody actually has a problem worth solving. And how do you figure out if somebody has a problem worth solving? I think the probably the first thing is just simply asking. Um, if you have a problem, what is this problem causing you? What pains is this problem causing you? Is your pain great enough to actually move the needle and pony up some dough for it? If the pain is great enough, can the problem be solved to move the pain far enough to get you to pleasure or to a
Mhm.
positive gain or an outcome? I think that's another question that can be asked. And if so, what would you pay for that problem to be solved in your life? That's kind of how I would start the product market fit scenario, if you will. Well, what's your thoughts, Tony?
Well, I think I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was on the treadmill. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a avid runner, and
But usually
so
not on treadmills.
I know it was 11 o'clock at night, and I
Yeah,
hadn't got
gotcha.
my training in. The 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 discipline to do what must be done to maintain what you want to maintain to achieve your goals. That's a topic we could talk about another time. But I found myself in a situation where, in order to maintain my training, I needed to run, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and it was cold outside. It was windy, and with it being dark, it was just safer for me to do that on the treadmill. So I hopped on the treadmill, put on a podcast on the TV, and I was watching, and they were talking about the companies who experience the most success and are able to eventually be sold for the most amount of money figure out how to solve a problem for their client, which is that's pretty I think self-apparent that if you can solve a problem for people, then you provide value. But what they said was the ones who are able to figure it out and sell for the most amount of money is the ones that are able to figure out how to solve a problem that people are willing to throw money at. Because there's two ways to solve a problem. You can solve it with money or you can solve it with time. That's really the only two options. And there are companies out there that pitch a product or a service that requires the client to solve it with their time. And so if you have clients that want to solve their problem by you do it with them or you show them how to do it and they have to do it, there is some ability to gain some level of success there. But if I told you you had to invest 100 hours to get this result, or you could invest X number of dollars, I can scale a lot faster if I'm just having you throw money at the problem versus me asking you to put 100 hours into it, because I can't control those 100 hours on the outcome. I can't control whether or not you actually put in those 100 hours.
That's interesting. I think I've heard it said a slightly different. Um, and it was in the realm of like building $1 million business versus $1 billion business. $1 million business solves a problem of the day. $1 billion business solves a problem for eternity. So like, because you're going to have that problem over and over and over again, and you're going to continue paying and paying and paying, and multitudes have that same problem. Are you familiar with the 4 levels of value? You ever heard of that?
I don't know that I have.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. So the first level of value is like implementation. That's you doing the work. That's you getting the shovel and digging the hole and putting your labor and effort into it. The next one is unification, and that's like me as a manager or unifiers. Like I gotta lead a team now, and they've got to do the same direction as what I'm doing and row in the same direction. And really those are like the ones that those 2 levels right there are really the ones that are like the threshold in order to
Hmm.
like break out of like substantial wealth. And substantial wealth comes on the next 2 levels. It's like communication. What you taught me when I was a CEO was you got to be a better communicator at casting the vision, telling people how to come together and bring this company together. That's a great communicator. That's why I've been like so focused on telling a story, being able to be articulate in my words and intentional with the words I use. But then the top level is imagination. This is your Elon Musks of the world. We're going to go to the not just the moon, but we're going to go to Mars, and
Yeah.
we're going to do that in the next few years. That's like, like upper echelon type of value that you provide. And it seems weird because like you're really just casting a vision. But like you say, like if you could get people to come alongside you, you've casted you they believe in you, you've influenced them, you motivated them into doing something big. That's where the real big money is at. So I
Yeah.
thought that was fascinating. The 4 levels of value. It's worth reading about.
I think we've talked about
I'm
this.
full of random facts, Tony. I'm sorry.
This is a random fact episode brought to you by Shawn and Tony. We talk about this quite a bit. We've talked about this. This has been one of my mantras for so long. But people long to be a part of something great.
Yeah.
We've become so disconnected with our social media connections. We see everybody's highlight reel. We see all the positive things that they want to show us. Every once in a while we have that weird cousin or friend that posts really random cryptic, the world's falling apart, but don't reach out to me and ask me why. Like,
Yeah. Right.
respect my privacy, but also I want everybody to know that my world's falling apart.
Yeah.
That kind of friend. But for the most part, people are putting out the real positive, the glossy bits, the top of the iceberg, but not showing what's underneath and all the work that goes into it. And so we can get depressed by or feel disconnected by the fact that everybody else seems to have it all together. They seem to be having a lot of fun, and we don't fit that category. And so if we can, in business or in our families or in our friend group, if we can create that big vision that gives people something excited to be united about, to be passionate about, this is a really cool thing that I'm going to be a part of, it creates a space for them to come and contribute and feel like they have a purpose, they're adding value, they are contributing, but also receiving. And one of the things, I don't know what else to equate it to. I'm sure there's something in flying or being in the military or whatever. But, and when I'm out on a 200-mile race, I may just happen to race at the same pace as somebody else for 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. And because we're all suffering or moving through and overcoming some of the same challenges at the same time, you create these incredible bonds where you have conversations where you're discussing things or being more vulnerable than you've ever been. You tell people out there things that you just have never told anybody else because it didn't even have a chance to come up in conversation in real life.
Yep.
And so with a shared goal, a shared vision, a shared outcome, shared methodologies, it creates it creates an opportunity for people to bond to achieve that really high level thing. But without that vision out there, without that goal, you deprive people of that opportunity to really achieve high level together and do something that really matters.
Yeah, I love that. I think, the running side, just from little running that I have done in the past, which is the most I've ever run in one time is probably like 10 miles. And I wanted to die after that. But I remember like the mental, emotional, even spiritual change, like mindset that your body and your mind and your emotions go through that. I can see why, um, I can see why those times on the trail can really have a massive bonding experience. When we went rim to rim, similar. Man, I built some serious relationships from that. And that was the first time I had ever met some of those guys. Wild. But I think, as I look at this four levels of value, I think like, what does it mean on a personal level? When does the biggest amount of breakthrough happen when somebody is going through any massive transformation in their life, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's relationships or spiritual, whatever? It happens when they actually have a vision, a mindset bigger than themselves. So if I'm working towards a goal and I'm, trying to get healthier, well, what's the reason for that? If it's just for the simple reason that I just want to work out, it's probably not going to last. But if it's for the big reason that I actually want to not lose muscle mass, I want to live a longer life, I want to be around for my kids as I get older, that's bigger than yourself. It's more about other people than just, internal. So I look at that four levels of value, and I think imagination is not just on the business side, but it's also on a personal journey or a transformation, if you will.
Something that I learned a long time ago, I think it was probably the first 100-mile race that I trained for. It was when I was done. Well, to be fair, the very first 100-mile race that I did, I only made it to 86 miles and I DNF'd. And there's a whole story behind that and me making the mental decision to quit,
I hate
which,
that you said only 86 miles. Like seriously, only?
well, I agree, but the goal was 100. The goal was 100, right? So I
Yes.
didn't finish. So that did some mental things to me because I was really set on hitting that goal. But um, I was pretty upset. So for a whole year, with that race, every training race I went back out, it was, this is to make sure that I don't do that again. I don't have that same experience. And so I thought that the next year I went out and ran that same race, when I did finish, that I was going to be really excited, really happy. And I was for about 2 hours. And then I fell asleep because when you're running that long, you're awake a long time. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up from taking that nap, it had kind of set in that this thing that I was working towards for so long, I had accomplished it. And then what? I didn't really have anything. I didn't have the next thing to strive for. And I think what I learned in that moment, in that lesson, was that it it's more about the journey than the destination. It's about who we become as we work hard to achieve our goals. It's those sacrifices. I know you and I have talked about the financial sacrifices that you made in order for you to put yourself in a position where you could invest in more real estate, which would provide a better uh, lifestyle for your family. But in that moment, the sacrifices you had to make, those shaped the person that you became and the discipline that you had moving forward to make good financial decisions. the fact that sometimes we get so excited about the destination that we fail to realize who we become, the transformation that we make as we go on the journey.
That's a good point. I was going to say that I'm not sure there ever should be a true destination. Now we look at a destination for the goal purpose, like I want to be X in this amount of time, or I want to have this in this amount of time, whatever, whatever the goal is. But I feel like the journey should never end. You shouldn't, maybe the better way to say it is you should never say, I've made it. I've made it. Well, that's probably a pretty demoralizing statement because then what? If you've made it, then well, should you just commit suicide or you know what I mean? Like, is your life over or what? I don't understand at that point. So I think
Yeah.
the journey is really it should just keep going on, you know?
I think I tie that back to a conversation I had with my running coach where we were talking about, he was telling people to celebrate when they hit a certain aid station in the race, to just say, okay, if this is going to be a hard section, celebrate when you get to the aid station, celebrate that you made it there. And so we had a conversation afterwards because we were in a Zoom meeting. And so I reached out to him. I said, I have a different mentality. I just want to see, does this make sense? Because I never celebrate when I get to the aid station. I celebrate when I leave, because it means I've moved past that and I'm on to the next thing.
Mhm.
And I kind of equate that to being a chess grandmaster, I think they call them, but it's somebody who's really good at chess isn't just thinking about the next move. They're thinking about the move after that or the move after that.
Mhm.
So as I'm pursuing goals, one of my goals initially was to finish the Moab 240. And as I was finishing that, I saw that there was the Triple Crown of 200s, which is 3 200-mile races. So I'm still working hard to get to this one. But when I accomplished that, I already had to have the next thing planned.
Yeah.
And then it was, let me finish in the top 10 of the Triple Crown. Then it was, let me go back to Moab. And so it's always one more thing, because I think if we ever achieve our final destination, as you mentioned, it's like that's our highest goal that we have. Yeah, then we're done.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Yeah. I've arrived. I've made it. That sounds horrible. What's your thoughts on like broadcasting the goal to the world? Like I think they're yeah, like so for instance, I've got an X goal and now I want to scream on the mountaintop and tell the world about it. And of course, I haven't laid any groundwork or foundation to actually achieve that. What's your thoughts on that process? Should you announce? Should you not announce?
I love this topic so much. I have done a lot of research around this. I actually was on a podcast where we were talking specifically about goal setting and achieving goals. And when I say, for example, if I just said, and by the way, I'm not going to go run the Leadville 100 because I put in the lottery 7 years in a row and I never got picked. So I moved on to 200-mile races.
You
So,
bastards.
but if I said I got into the Leadville 100, if I told you that I was training for that and that I was going to win or get in and that I was going to finish, I get a dopamine hit every time I tell somebody.
Yeah.
There's a small dopamine hit I get just for talking about a goal that I'm chasing. So, number one, you have to be really careful. You can use that to motivate yourself to stay motivated to do the training, but a lot of people get caught. How many authors do you know that are writing a book? They get the dopamine hit when they say they're writing a book,
Yeah,
right?
most of them.
They
Yeah,
may have
they're all
written
writing
3 pages 2 years ago,
okay.
but if they say they're an author and they're writing a book, they get a big hit.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really careful about telling people that you're achieving a goal or that you're striving to achieve a goal, because it makes you feel good to tell people that. There's another aspect to it, though, that you want to be really careful who you tell your goals to. There are people that you tell that can help support you and move you along and give you resources and give you connections. And there are people who are waiting to hear your goal to tell you that you're not good enough and tear you down and give you doubt and put insecurities and thoughts into your head that you're not good enough to be able to accomplish it. So you have to be really careful. I'm all for publicly declaring the goals that you're chasing because there's a level of accountability,
Yep.
but I'm pretty careful about the goals that I tell and who I tell them to so that I create a support system that enables me to achieve those versus exposing. It's kind of like a young chick that just hatched, right? You're exposing it to the world, but unless you got people around there to support you and provide you with safety and security and to be there to nurture you, there's a high chance that you're going to end up in a bad spot because those people don't want to see somebody else succeed if they're not succeeding.
Yeah, and oftentimes they want to bring you down because they're not succeeding themselves. How do you what's some red flags maybe that like how do you know who you can tell and who you cannot tell?
This episode's been a lot about running, but it's one of the areas where I set the biggest goals, right? So, it's one of those things where if I want to learn to run 50 miles, I start hanging around people who run 100 miles because running 50 miles is only half as far as 100, and it's the easy half. It's the first half. Like they're running 50 miles after they've already run 50 miles. So it's being around people who have done what you want to do or have some level of expertise or some way of helping lift you up. Somebody who really cares about you could still be the wrong person to tell. There are people in my family that don't really get the whole running thing out in the woods during the night, 12 hours in the middle of the desert with no cell signal, no way to reach anybody, no roads around, nowhere. You're in between aid stations that are 25 miles apart. And they, in their best interest, they think it's in my best interest, would want to convince me that that's not something that I should do because they just don't understand the situation.
Mhm.
They don't understand that I've taken a calculated risk. I've prepared myself. I have equipment. If I fell and broke a leg, I have an emergency bivy. I've taken the precautions. They don't see all that work in the background. But somebody else that has already done that race 3 or 4 times, they're the ones to tell.
Mhm.
Whether they've succeeded or failed, even the people that have done it and failed, they've learned lessons that I can learn from that I wouldn't have to learn and experience my first time. So I don't know that there's an exact answer of tell this person, don't tell this person, but I think there's, in my mind, I'm looking for a mentor, I'm looking for a coach, I'm looking for somebody who's done it, somebody further along on the trail than I am, not somebody who is my biggest cheerleader but has no idea what I've gone through or what I'm about to go through to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. There's a level of success that somebody has gotten to that because they've reached that success, they can see the opportunities and they can help you avoid the pitfalls. Um, and most people that have taken big risks will not tell you to not take big risks. Uh, they will just help you refine the cautions of the risk.
Yeah.
Like, go get him. Like, go make it happen. However, this is some risks you're going to face along the way. And people that I think of some people in my family who have never owned a business, aren't very successful. They would never they'd be the worst person to tell any idea because they'd probably meet it with judgment. Like, why would you even want to do that? Like, it's better for me to just work my 9 to 5 and collect my paycheck. Why would you want to, why would you put yourself out there? So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's good advice. I don't know that there's like a clear like yes, no, but you got to use some intuition there and seek that advice from people that have gone before you, if you will.
And I think it's okay to distance yourself from people who don't get it. the ones that have your best interest. They may love you, they may be really concerned about you, but if you are all in on a goal and they're providing negative energy, negative thoughts, negative actions, you got to distance yourself from them permanently or temporarily.
Yeah. Let's swing to the other side of this question is, and this is where I lean. I typically don't tell anybody. I get very private. And the reason I get private about it is because the fear of failure based on reputation. So if I fail, what is this going to do? How's this going to make me look, if you will? And I definitely lean more that way. I have to refine an idea very deeply before I even tell my wife, like, hey, I'm thinking about this, but I've put this much time and effort educating myself into it before I even brought it to you. Um, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
tell her everything, but I don't tell her everything right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think that that viewpoint and my viewpoint are that different. I am also motivated by the fear of failure. When I publicly declare that I want to achieve something, there's a level of accountability. Now I have to put in the effort. I have to do what it takes to achieve success so that I don't fail, not just for me, but because I've told other people. So I think we're both motivated by you don't want to tell anybody because you don't want to fail and see that and have people publicly see you fail. I also don't want to fail and have people publicly see me fail. And so I actually will intentionally tell people so that I hit my goals. I think if I tried to achieve some of my goals in secrecy, I'm the only one who would know if I failed. I'm the only one holding me accountable. I'm the only one that if I don't hit the goal, like the world goes on. And the world goes on anyways. If I don't hit a goal, nobody else honestly cares. They just don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're so focused on themselves. We all are that it doesn't matter. But it just helps me in a dark time where I know I've got people cheering for me. It helps me get through and achieve that. But I certainly can see that viewpoint of keeping it all to yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell you just recently, it took a lot of courage and strength of myself to actually put out there a webinar that I'm having. And that was not easy for me to announce. I struggled. I went over that webinar announcement copy 15 times, 30 times, just to, like, is every word in the right, you know what I mean? And does it look good? And the reality is I think what keeps me somewhat grounded is people don't give a crap. They're worried about their own world. You know what I mean? And social media. I mean, that was in an email list, and I put it on Facebook finally, but that took me a lot too. But social media is just so like that was so 5 minutes ago. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Does it even mean anything? Yeah. So anyway, I like that. That took a lot for me to get over that hurdle because it makes it official.
This brings me back to a conversation we had probably a week ago. And this provides so much more depth and helps me understand. We were having a conversation about content, and you asked me, is it quantity over quality or quality over quantity?
Yep.
And you said that you really wanted to put out a very good product. You wanted to be, and I'm speaking for you, so you can correct me,
Yep.
but basically, I don't want to put out anything unless it's perfect. And my rebuttal to that was I'd rather put out whatever I can put out now and increase my ability to put out better and better content through the repetition. And so uh, it's just interesting that now I'm seeing a little bit more of the motivation for each one of us behind the positions we took in that statement.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know that I view myself as like a private person, but uh I do care about the value that is cast into the world. Um and I have been known to have what's called foot and mouth disease.
Yeah.
I have said pretty stupid stuff and I think we all have. but I want to make sure that what I do is good, great, if you will. But you make a good point. Like, how do you make it great? Well, how do you get in shape? You put in the reps.
Yeah. Well, the conversation we had, so you just mentioned value, which we did not talk about value in that conversation that we had. So
Well,
if you think
yeah,
about, is it quality that provides value or quantity that provides value? I still want to provide as much value as possible. I just don't care. Like my lighting right now, like my lighting's been driving me nuts for about the last year. I've bought different lighting, I've done different things. This lighting over here, I know I run in the winter and so I get a lot of sun, so I look kind of orange, but like I but it's just like if I waited until I figured out the lighting, we wouldn't have recorded a single thing.
yeah.
So I'm still trying to provide and deliver value while I'm figuring out how to improve my quality.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. And I didn't flip off my light, and so I my lights are just all jacked today. But I think like one thing I have noticed, and it's just my personal social media experience, is that, and I don't know if it's the algorithms of the platform or what, but there are several people that completely turn into white noise for me. And I don't want to turn into white noise for anybody. I want to stay relevant, I want to stay impactful, and I want it to bring value. The ones that have turned into white noise, like it's so bad of white noise to me, it's like nails on a chalkboard. And they're big names in our industries. So it's like I don't want to be that guy. And I think it conditions my mindset as to like what do I want to put out and how frequently I want to put out, and it definitely influences me.
Let's dive deeper, Shawn. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Do I need to pull up on the couch?
Yeah. So I'm curious if that person that you're referencing or people that you're referencing put out a higher quality content with the same messaging, would you ever be their target client? Would you ever purchase from them?
Well, I have purchased from a couple of them that had come to mind, but I would say that if they yes, I will answer that question with yes. If it was higher quality, um, it would be substantially more likely that I would purchase from them again.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that question is it seems like as a content creator or somebody that is marketing a specific product or service, there is a big benefit in creating two camps and dividing the people that watch you into those that love you and those that hate you. And those that love you are going to follow you and carry your flag, and those that hate you are still going to give you attention. And if you kind of are right down the middle, nobody loves you, nobody hates you, that's where you're the white noise. It's just like you're in the middle of the road, you don't excite anybody, you don't tick anybody off. And so that's why I was leaning towards that question was, is it somebody that because of the way they put out their content or create the white noise, it's pushed you away from them, which means if that's true, there are probably other people that have been pulled towards them with that content. But it sounds like I don't really know if that's true in this scenario.
Um, I would guess maybe. I don't know for sure. I mean, obviously, I don't know their numbers, but to me, like, I would much rather have 10 people have that gain a high value from me or have a tight relationship or a great community than I would a million that are mediocre.
Sure. I
So
could
I
see
don't
that.
know, I mean, it doesn't really relate back to what you're saying, and I don't really know what, these folks that are white noise to me fit into that camp from their actual super fans, if you will. But I would rather have super fans than detractors.
Well, I think most of us would rather have super fans than detractors, but I'd rather have super fans and detractors than some nobody cares either way. What do you think makes those people white noise to you?
On the surface, I would say the lack of attention to the quality, I guess. Like, and they're man, I don't. I guess they probably just don't speak to me emotionally. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I don't know. Um, yeah, like I think it's just we live in a society that everybody's vying for your attention, and anything that isn't going to fit my attention or provide for my attention's quality, the quality attention I give out, then I don't want anything to do with it.
So maybe where our disconnect is how do you describe quality? What does quality mean to you?
Oh man, I think in the content creation world, is that what you mean?
Sure.
Has a valid, maybe even spiky opinion about things. Um, I like spiky opinions. I have a few myself. um, the ones that have understood that there's a legitimacy to the viewer's time. Meaning like if you want me to see that content, then you should earn it. That's quality. Because I think we have to be respectful of not wasting other people's time, if that makes any sense. Um, so like to put content out just to put content out, yeah, that doesn't set well with me. It actually turns my stomach a little bit.
I think maybe I'm starting to understand your position a little bit more. And when initially we were talking about quality, I was thinking you were talking about production quality. I think it's a factor, but to me, that's the top layer. That's for me, quality is if I watch something or listen to something and I get something of value of it, and I can hear the audio is decent, the lighting is decent, the conversation is decent, and I'm able to extract 2 or 3 nuggets out of it that make me say, "You know what? That was worth my time." I don't really care if there's flashy graphics flying in and B-roll and all of that. Now, once I've provided that level of there's good content, good conversation, good lighting, good audio, how can I make it even better? Well, then, yeah, I bring in a video editor and I have them do B roll and splice in these flying symbols across the screen and all the post edits and stuff like that. Like to me, that adds that takes something that already has value and makes it even better. But if I can put out something, and this is where I think where I prefer the quantity or my position, if I can take that base layer where I'm providing something that has good audio, good video, good conversation. Somebody can pull 2 or 3 nuggets out, and I can put out 3 of those videos in the same time it would take me to do one that has the content with the flying logos and the monkeys and all the stuff. I'd rather put out 3 where I can provide expanded value in the content that's being said than only put out one that has some flashy lower thirds and stuff like that. So uh, maybe we're
Well,
saying the same thing, but at a
why do
different
we
level.
wrap presents? It's near Christmas time.
Hmm.
Why do we wrap presents?
This is so funny because I bet you. So when I unwrap a present, I don't go and look to see if all the edges are exactly straight and the end
I
of the
don't either. I
box
don't
comes to
care.
a point. No, I just want to say, okay, for me, it's the anticipation of what's underneath. It's the experience of unwrapping it and having a good
It's to
experience.
conceal what's underneath too, like to conceal
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um,
But you only conceal it so you can reveal it.
Correct. Yes. So if if it looked like a pile of trash, if the present
Mhm.
looked like a pile of trash, would anybody wanna open it?
I'm gonna answer that with a personal experience. So
Okay.
when I was a kid growing up, my grandma didn't have a lot of money. So the presents that she wrapped for us, she wrapped in the Sunday funny papers. So in the cartoons. So she'd take those out of the newspaper, she'd save those, and then she would wrap our presents in those. They didn't look like everybody else's presents. That was her signature thing. It wasn't fancy, it didn't have bows, but when I got that present and it was wrapped in the newspaper, but they were the funny papers, they were all colored and, you know, to me that had more value or just as much value because it was her own stamp on it. I didn't look at it like, "Oh, this is a pile of trash, so the gift inside must be a pile of trash too."
Yeah, um, I'll I'll compare, but because I don't think I think even with the Sunday, comedy strip or whatever that wrapped the newspaper that wrapped the present is not the same as a pile of trash, something that detracts you from wanting to open it, right? It's still attractive, and I think it's actually more attractive in the sense that there's a personal touch to that. Like grandma did this for me, I think that's great. But when we're producing content, it's not a one to one. Like I didn't produce a piece of content for Johnny on the street typically. So my point is, I don't know that that's a good comparison, but I'll follow up with a personal, uh, you know, a personal story, if you will. My nephew, when he was about 4 or 5, my mom had wrapped a present of his in a Cheerios box, those like family ones, those big ones. And he opens it up. He goes, "Oh my God, Cheerios! I love Cheerios!" Like, and we got it on video. It's just this most hilarious thing. Um, so like I think the packaging has to resonate with the opener, the viewer, the consumer, if you will. And if nobody is willing to open it, then nobody gets to view it. And then it serves no one. And that's the instantaneous first impression that we have to tell our audience this is something that is quality to you. This is something that you should pay attention to. This might, in fact, change your life. There's some nuggets in here that help your life out. That's what I mean by like quality. Like it starts from the thumbnail, the title, or whatever the copy. In my case, this was webinar announcement copy. Like I really wanted that to be the words that should come out, and maybe I failed. I have no idea. I got a pretty good viewer list so far. But anyhow, that's what I mean. Like that's the quality I think is important. And if it doesn't meet those requirements for me, it does turn into white noise. Now, not if they put in one piece of content, not if they put in 10 pieces of content like that. But when I see like a progression of like the content is not elevating, it doesn't increase in quality, then it's white noise to me.
I I I see that, and we want to get better and better. But when we had Home Vault, I introduced a term that we brought from when I had my tech company. And in the tech business, there's something called the minimum viable product. What is the what is the minimum product that we can put out that we are proud enough to put our name on to get us going, to get us started, to get some feedback, to be able to then take that base product, take the feedback we're receiving and make it better, as opposed to let's sit and wait to release this product until it's 100% absolutely perfect in the lab, and then we release it to the wild and the public that is using it tells us, "Oh, this is crap, this is too many clicks, why is this link here, this should be over here under this menu."
Mm.
You don't get that feedback if you don't release that minimum viable product.
No, I think you're
So
exactly right. Actually, I think releasing minimum viable products are a very good thing. I think that it's a difference of what the initial benchmark is. What is the minimum to you and what
yeah,
is the minimum to me and how long are you willing to keep you the product in the minimum viable product stage before it gets iterated into something greater at the risk of turning into white noise.
Yeah.
So I,
All right. I feel like we need to bring this back full circle. We started talking about market fit. We started talking about where we fit in the marketplace, how you determine whether or not you have a good offering. We've gone way off into the weeds. I think it was a good conversation, but let's bring it back to how does this conversation that we just had apply to helping somebody determine their fit in the marketplace?
uh, I think it just goes back to understanding, intimately understanding your customer base. Like, what do
Mhm.
they actually want from you? What do they want solved from you? And what are they willing to pay for that to be solved?
I think that there, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you out on something.
You
Um,
always do.
yeah. Well, we've had conversation. I think we've actually even shared it on the podcast, but you and I have both done some things recently where it wasn't necessarily as successful as we had hoped. You had rolled out your Give Nectar, um, gift giving, value creation for employees or for clients, and you rolled out a product and then went looking for a market.
Yep.
And this time around, you've done things much differently. And I think that you've learned some things, you've taught me some things, and I've actually begun to implement some of those practices. But are you open to kind of sharing what you've done differently this time around to ensure that the product that you're bringing to market is a better fit?
Oh, sure. I'll tell everything that I did. I mean, I think one is understanding the industry and the marketplace first and foremost. So I'm not trying to branch out into something completely different. It's a industry and marketplace I already am very familiar with. I think that was one. And now I'm not saying that's negative, by the way. I think people can, if I am a business owner, I've never been a plumber. I think I could own a plumbing business. You know what I mean? I don't think there's massive risk with that, but know that there is a higher risk in achieving that. The second thing is I asked a bunch of people, 50 people in a specific niche where they are uh, in their personal financial and business financial journeys, and asked very specific questions and kept those questions relevant, but also consistent throughout each and every one of those sometimes hour long interviews. And I wanted to understand intimately the pains that are caused by not being financially free or strapped by money or whatever the case may be. And I wanted to understand what they envisioned their gains to be. So that, I mean, like, we can all have pain, but if we never see a way out of the pain, is there anything worth solving? Right? This has become status quo for me. My life is always going to be this way, and it is what it is. And then it was, and nobody had an answer to this, by the way, in my 50 interviews. Like, what are you willing to pay if somebody could solve this problem for you? That's a tough one for people to say. Like me, it's easy to say, like, I'll invest $50,000 if I could get a million back, right? We'd all do that. But do they know that you could do it? Is one. And is what's the dollar amount that you're willing to fork up? You know what I mean? And what's even more challenging about that is that people that find themselves in that maybe lower financial mindset, if you will, like that challenging mindset they're in, they don't also understand risk. So I just see that I'm losing money, and I don't know that if I'm losing money, will it actually turn into a 10x of money, or is it just a loss of money? Can it actually be an investment, or am I just losing that money? And that's a challenge to overcome.
I think that's a good distinction between risk and calculated risk. And then there was a psychological study, and I can't remember uh, if it's the book Irrational. What is it? Irrational.
Yeah, irrational. I've read that book.
Yeah, I know we've talked about it in the past. We'll have to link it in the show notes maybe, but Predictably Irrational, I
Yeah,
think,
there you go.
is the name of it. And there's something along the lines of, in the book, there's a study. It's basically like, I walk up to you, I give you $5, and you get excited because I gave you $5 and it's just free $5. And then I give you the option to do a double or nothing of that $5 to $10. If you're willing to pay me that $5, I will
Yeah.
give you the chance to win $10.
Nobody
Well,
does
that
it.
$5 wasn't yours 2 minutes ago,
Yeah.
but we are more risk adverse. We are more focused on the pain of losing that $5 than we are of winning the $10.
Yep.
And so asking people, what are you willing to pay for the chance of becoming financially independent, or the chance of making $100,000? That's a different question than the question of, what are you willing to pay for guaranteed, certified, no doubt, make $100,000 guaranteed?
You just hit it.
Different question. Yeah.
Yeah. I That's the question that is almost so hard for very risk adverse people to answer.
Mhm.
They can't see past the loss to get to the gain.
Yeah. I think the way that you can move people past that is, we talked about Elon Musk earlier about going to Mars. That's obviously a risk, but he has created in his mind, and he's created in the framework of his projects, the he has changed the calculation of the risk. He has put the risks, the odds of risk or the odds of success or failure, in his mind, the odds of succeeding are greater than the odds of failure. So we have to figure out how to manipulate, in a good way. I'm not talking about manipulate people, but manipulate the odds so that it's not a 1-to-1 ratio where I have a 50% chance of winning. I have a 90% chance of winning, or an 80% chance of winning when I take this risk.
Well,
And
and I
I
would
think,
add the cost of failure to Elon is far greater than the cost of success. So meaning he believes it is a humanity issue if he doesn't succeed. That cost
yeah,
is far greater than the cost of his success.
yeah. Interesting stuff, Shawn.
Oh, this was fun, man. That was kind of deep and deep, deep and deep.
Yeah, I think every once in a while we just need to have a random thoughts with Shawn and Tony.
You know what's funny is like we literally began this before we hit record, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm in the mindset. I've got a splitting headache. I'm not even sure we should record today. And you're like, just hit the record button and let's talk.
Let's just talk.
Uh,
So
Good
we'll have to
times.
see if this meets your quality standard for content that you put out. So you have to watch it back.
There was a lot of good shiznit in there. Yeah, I liked it.
Good, good. Well, hopefully, if we don't see it, then nobody will know that this wound up in the trash bin. But count it as one of our reps.
And just in case, it's in the can.
It's in the can. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise of what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur.
If today's episode hit home, share it with a friend. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.